817. That was her ranking 2 years ago. Not a slump, not a rough patch. Outside the top 800 players on the entire planet, in a sport where the top 100 barely make a comfortable living. And 9 days ago, on the other side of a draw sheet in Toronto, a 21-year-old lifted her first WTA trophy and became the highest-ranked player her country has ever produced. 2 sentences. 2 completely different women. In a few hours, they walk onto the same court, under the same sun, and only one of them leaves with her story intact. Stay with me. There's a detail from her comeback that never makes the highlight reel. An operating table. A surgeon working inside an elbow that belongs to a player whose entire game is built on touch feel, timing, the kind of delicate racket work you cannot muscle your way through. She wakes up to no cameras, no headlines, just a quiet room, a ranking number sliding the wrong way every few weeks, and a decision nobody sees her make, show up again tomorrow anyway. Not because anybody was watching, because nobody was, and she had to decide, alone, whether that changed anything. Toronto in early August doesn't feel like a third-round afternoon. Crowds spill past the practice courts before the gates even open. Broadcast trucks line the players' entrance like they're guarding something. Somewhere inside that noise, 2 women are about to play a match that, on paper, is a footnote the round before the tournament starts mattering to anyone outside the sport. Except tennis people are already calling this one dangerous. Because one of these players just did something to a Wimbledon champion that nobody thought she had in her. And the other one, the favorite, the one seeded to win this comfortably, is about to find out exactly what that means for her afternoon. Watch how the rise actually happened, because the manner matters more than the number at the end of it. A left-handed teenager, trained at an academy built by one of the greatest champions the sport has ever seen. Hammering the same heavy topspin forehand into the same corner of the court until it stopped being a shot and became a weapon nobody wanted to stand across from. A wildcard entry that could have ended in a quiet first-round exit, the kind that happens to 100 young players a season and gets forgotten by October. Instead, it ended in a semifinal, taking out opponents with twice her experience, until the locker room stopped whispering watch out for her and started saying, flatly, she's already here. Then a dip. Quiet enough that some wondered if the semifinal had been a ceiling, not a floor. And then this year, an explosion, a maiden title in Washington, torn through like she'd been doing it for years. 9 wins in her last 10 matches, a 6-match streak still alive walking into Toronto. On August 3rd, history, world number 20, the highest her country has ever climbed, the first from her nation to crack the top 30. She didn't arrive in this tournament hoping. She arrived expected to win. Not a surprise anymore. A target the size of a continent, with an entire country checking the score between meetings, between school runs, hours removed from Toronto's clock. Now rewind to the other name on that sheet, because her rise never looked like a rise at all. It looked like survival, stretched across 18 anonymous months. After the surgery, she wasn't playing in stadiums with her name lit on a scoreboard. She was playing courts with no stands, sometimes fewer than 20 people watching, on tour levels most casual fans have never heard of, grinding through matches that earned no headlines and barely any ranking points. 817 isn't a slump. A slump means you were higher and slipped, with an obvious road back. This was closer to starting from zero, while the rest of the tour kept a 2-year head start she'd never fully close. She entered anyway, lost, climbed back a handful of points at a time, the way someone claws out of a hole using nothing but fingernails, with no promise the top was even reachable from where she was digging. Nobody filmed that part. There's no algorithm for a first-round win on an outside court nobody's watching. Here's the part that should stop you cold. 2 rounds before this one, she walked out against the newly crowned Wimbledon champion ranked 7th, fresh off the biggest win of her career. Exactly the kind of opponent built to end a comeback story quietly before it earns too much attention. Everyone in that stadium expected a slaughter in the wrong direction the moment power met power. Instead, she did something far more unsettling. She slowed the entire match down, sliced the ball low, then lower, until the Wimbledon champion was bending her knees just to keep it alive, dragged into a rhythm that wasn't hers on a surface built to reward the opposite. Every short ball got punished at the net with a volley clean enough to look rehearsed. It wasn't power. It was closer to an argument, fought out in strokes instead of words, and she won every exchange of it. Straight sets. The champion walked off looking outthought, not outplayed. For a player used to dictating every point on her own terms, that's a far more disorienting way to lose than simply running into someone bigger. And this afternoon isn't a rematch of that style. It's the opposite problem, wearing a different jersey. One player is left-handed, hitting a heavy looping forehand that wants the ball sitting up around shoulder height so she can rip through it. The other is right-handed, and she doesn't hit a normal two-handed backhand at all. She slices it, flat and skidding, dying low on the bounce before it ever reaches a comfortable strike zone. That's not a stylistic preference. That's two different physics problems being dropped onto the same 81 feet of hard court. If the favorite gets impatient, and impatience is exactly what happens to a player who spent 6 matches blowing people off the court, she'll start reaching for winners on balls that were never sitting where she wanted them, and the errors will start bleeding out of her racket one at a time. If the comeback story lets even one slice float half a foot too high, the favorite steps inside the baseline and ends the point before a reply is possible. Neither of them has to lose control of the match all at once. One wrong decision at the wrong moment is enough. Watch the return of serve 2, because that's the second battle hiding inside the obvious one. Neither of them serves huge. This isn't about aces, it's about who controls the first shot of the rally. The favorite likes to take a small step back off the baseline, buy herself half a second extra, and load a deep, heavy return that seizes the point immediately. The other player does the opposite. She crowds the line, slices her return short and low, and starts moving forward before the ball has even landed, arriving at the net, while her opponent is still deciding what to do about a ball that's already dying at her feet. That single split-second decision, repeated dozens of times across 3 sets, might matter more than either forehand. Then there's the surface itself, and it doesn't pick a side cleanly either. Toronto's hard courts run medium fast, which on paper favors the flatter, heavier ball striker. She's already banked well over 160 career wins on surfaces like this one. But medium fast courts have a habit of rewarding exactly what the other player brings too: a low slice, a sharp first volley. A game built on taking time away rather than giving the ball pace. And there's the humidity most broadcasts won't mention as an August afternoon in Toronto wears on, the balls get heavier, the rallies get longer, and the match quietly turns into a question of who has more left in the tank late on a Saturday. A 21-year-old riding the best stretch of her career, or a woman who already survived a surgery and 18 months nobody watched. There's a specific weight that comes with being the favorite, and it isn't the same weight as having nothing left to lose. The 21-year-old steps onto this court carrying a title, a ranking, a 6-match streak, and a nation refreshing the score in real time before the first set is even finished. That tightens shoulders in ways players rarely admit until years later. In interviews, nobody watches until it's already cost them something. The woman across the net carries nothing but permission. She already beat the version of this match that was supposed to be unwinnable for someone at her ranking. Everything from here is a bonus round, house money, nothing owed to anybody. And a fearless opponent with nothing left to protect is one of the most dangerous things in this entire sport, more dangerous than any number sitting next to her name. This is why a third-round match should matter to people who couldn't name another player in this draw. Underneath the slice backhands and the lefty-righty geometry sits the oldest story there is, being written off completely, reduced to a number on a screen, and refusing quietly, without an audience to accept the writing was finished. It's the story of someone told, implicitly, that 817 was simply who she was now. That careers end quietly on courts with no stands and nobody notices the exact match it happened. And it's the story of someone else who has to prove, at 21, with a country's expectations on her shoulders for the first time, that winning once wasn't luck, wasn't a single lightning strike that never repeats. Different ages, different continents, different academies, different languages in their team boxes, different roads that somehow arrive at the same net post on the same afternoon in the same city. Same exact test. Neither one gets to skip it. Neither of them is finished, whatever the scoreboard says by evening. If the favorite solves this puzzle, the next step isn't just a fourth round in Toronto, it's a stronger US Open seed that keeps her clear of the tour's biggest names deep into the draw. And proof that Washington wasn't a one-week accident, but a level she's crossed for good. If she loses here, this becomes the match people replay years later to explain the exact afternoon she learned that momentum doesn't automatically beat a player who refuses to play the match you prepared for all week. And if the other woman wins the one who spent 18 months rebuilding an elbow and a ranking that people had quietly, privately, stopped believing in this stops being a nice comeback story you tell for sympathy. It becomes something with teeth. A second win over a top 20 player in the same tournament. A message to every seed left in the draw that 817 was a place she passed through, not a description of her ceiling. So watch what happens on that baseline, because it's about to answer something neither of them can answer in an interview afterward, no matter how confident either one sounds walking out. Whether the fastest rise this sport has seen in months can survive its first real test of patience against a player who's already proven this same week that she can dismantle bigger names without hitting a single ball harder than she has to. Or whether the quietest comeback of the season has one more match left in it before someone, somewhere, finally has to start believing the number on the ranking page again, wherever it lands once this week is over. Tell me who you've got, the 21-year-old carrying a nation's expectations for the first time, or the woman who rebuilt herself from 817 with nobody watching and nobody promising it would work. Drop your prediction before the score comes in. In a few years, when everyone knows this name you'll want a record of when you knew first.